Forget everything you've seen in Christmas movies and holiday cards. The story of Jesus' birth didn't happen in a peaceful, cozy setting, but right in the middle of one of the most violent and oppressive periods in human history. The Roman Empire ruled with an iron fist, crucifying rebels along the roads as brutal warnings, while Herod the Great killed even his own sons out of political paranoia. And in this world of terror, a teenage girl was about to receive a visit from an angel. Mary didn't live in a time of human rights or protections for women. She lived in a society where getting pregnant outside of marriage meant certain death by public stoning. The stones weren't symbolic. They were real tools of execution that shattered bodies into bloody pulp before crowds hungry for justice. When the angel Gabriel appeared to her, he wasn't offering a simple blessing, but inviting her to face death for God's purpose. Joseph, on the other hand, wasn't the gentle, passive man Renaissance paintings make him out to be. He was a tecton, a rugged builder who worked with heavy stones and raw timber under the scorching sun of Palestine. His hands were calloused, his muscles shaped by hard labor, and his mind trained to make tough decisions in a world where survival depended on strength and grit. When he discovered Mary was pregnant, he faced the hardest choice of his life. The truth is, there was nothing romantic about this story. It was raw courage. While our Christmas traditions paint a picture of peace and calm, the biblical reality shows two young people risking everything, even their own lives, to fulfill God's eternal purpose. They didn't know they were changing history. They only knew God had spoken, and that was enough to face whatever came next. But do you have the courage to discover how this story really happened? When you think of Joseph, you probably imagine a quiet carpenter making furniture in a peaceful workshop. But the original Greek word used in the New Testament is tekton, which means much more than a simple woodworker. Joseph was a builder, a craftsman skilled in working with heavy materials like limestone and massive wooden beams. He wasn't making little chairs and tables. He was building houses, walls, bridges, and structures meant to withstand earthquakes and storms. Picture Joseph lifting stone blocks weighing hundreds of pounds under the relentless sun of Galilee. His arms were muscular, his back broad, his hands so calloused they looked like tanned leather. He understood the literal weight of responsibility. When a family hired him, their safety depended on the quality of his work. A poorly built wall could collapse and kill sleeping children. A weak foundation could crumble in a storm and destroy everything a family owned. This is the man God chose to protect Mary and Jesus. Not a refined intellectual or a religious figure in white robes, but a laborer who knew the value of sweat and perseverance. Joseph knew how to take on impossible projects, how to turn raw stone into solid structure, how to push through when the work felt endless. Those same qualities would be essential to raising the Son of God in a hostile and dangerous world. Matthew 13:55 confirms this reality when the people of Nazareth ask, "Isn't this the son of the tecton?" They weren't referring to a delicate craftsman, but to a respected, strong builder. Joseph taught Jesus not only how to work with his hands, but how to endure hardship, how to build something lasting even when the materials were imperfect, and how to find purpose in the hard work that supports a family and serves the community. But if Joseph was so physically strong, why did God allow him to face the greatest emotional test of his life? Mary was between 12 and 14 when the angel Gabriel appeared to her, a teenager in a culture where girls that age were already considered women ready for marriage. But her youth didn't lessen the gravity of what she was being asked to do. It actually made her decision even more extraordinary when she said, "Here am I, the Lord's servant. May it be done to me according to your word." Luke 1:38. She was literally signing her own death sentence. Mosaic law was crystal clear about pregnancy during the betrothal period. It was considered adultery and punished by public stoning. Deuteronomy 22:23-24 states that both the woman and the man must be stoned at the city gate. Mary had known this law since childhood. She had likely seen executions, knew how stones crushed skulls and how blood pooled in the dirt. Even so, she chose to trust God above her own safety. Imagine the terror that must have gripped her heart when she felt the first signs of pregnancy. Every bout of morning sickness was a reminder that her life hung by a thread. Every suspicious glance from neighbors was a potential threat. Every whispered conversation in the streets could be the beginning of a formal accusation leading to her death. Mary lived for months, knowing that at any moment a mob could form, grab stones, and execute her in public. But her courage wasn't based on ignorance or naivety. It was rooted in a radical faith in God's character. When she visited Elizabeth, her cousin, and heard that the baby in Elizabeth's womb had leapt for joy, Mary burst into praise. "My soul magnifies the Lord." Luke 1:46. She wasn't just pregnant. She was carrying the hope of all humanity, and that was worth any risk, any suffering, any sacrifice. But how did Joseph react when he discovered his fiancée was pregnant by someone else? When Joseph learned of Mary's pregnancy, his world collapsed. Imagine the pain, the confusion, the sense of betrayal slicing through him like a knife. He loved Mary deeply, had planned a future with her, dreamed of the children they would raise together. Now faced with undeniable evidence of a pregnancy he knew wasn't his, Joseph confronted the hardest choice of his life: expose Mary publicly or protect her quietly. Matthew 1:19 reveals Joseph's extraordinary character. Being a righteous man and not wanting to disgrace her, he decided to divorce her quietly. He could have demanded a public investigation, formally accused her of adultery, and insisted she be stoned according to the law. That would have cleared his name and served as a warning to others. It was his legal right and his social protection, but Joseph chose mercy, even if it meant carrying the shame alone. When the angel appeared to him in a dream and revealed the truth about the miraculous conception, Joseph made an even more radical choice. He would marry Mary publicly, claiming a child everyone knew wasn't his. That meant accepting whispers, contemptuous looks, and cruel jokes for years to come. Joseph chose to be known as the man who married an impure woman to protect her reputation and the legitimacy of the child. This decision cost Joseph his social standing, his respected position in the community, and likely many work contracts. Conservative religious families didn't want to hire a man who had married a woman of questionable morals. Joseph paid a steep social price to obey God, becoming a human shield protecting Mary and Jesus from society's accusations. He chose to be misunderstood by people in order to be approved by God. But where exactly was Jesus born, and why does that matter so much? For centuries, Christian tradition imagined Joseph and Mary being turned away by harsh innkeepers and forced to take shelter in a cold, lonely stable. But that romantic interpretation completely distorts the cultural reality of first-century Palestine. The Greek word used in Luke 2:7 isn't pandokeion, a commercial inn, but kataluma, a guest room. Jesus wasn't born in an overcrowded hotel, but in the home of relatives in Bethlehem, where the guest room was already taken by other family members who had also come for the census. In Palestinian architecture at the time, houses were built with two levels: the upper floor where the family slept, and the ground floor where the animals were brought in at night for protection and warmth. It wasn't a dirty, abandoned stable, but an essential part of the family home. During winter, the animals' body heat warmed the entire house, and their presence added security against thieves and predators. Jesus was born surrounded by family, not isolated in a place of rejection. Picture the real scene. Mary in labor on the ground floor of a relative's house, experienced women helping with the birth, Joseph nervous but staying by her side, curious kids peeking around corners, and the comforting sounds of household animals creating a warm, familiar environment. There was no cruel rejection or abandonment, just an extended family doing the best they could to host all the relatives who came for the Roman census. The manger where Jesus was laid wasn't a symbol of rejection, but of practicality and deep symbolism. It was the cleanest, safest spot available, a stone or wooden feeding trough filled with fresh hay. That's where the bread of life was placed, in the very place where food was offered, a prophetic image that he would become the spiritual nourishment of all humanity. God didn't choose a palace or temple, but the heart of a simple home where real life happened. But why did God choose to announce this birth to shepherds and not to priests? When the angel appeared to the shepherds in the fields of Bethlehem, he gave them a specific sign so they could recognize the Messiah. "This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." Luke 2:12. That sign wasn't random. It was a revolutionary statement about the nature of God's kingdom. The Messiah wouldn't be in a palace guarded by soldiers or in a temple reserved for priests, but in a feeding trough accessible to anyone. Shepherds were considered the bottom rung of Jewish society. They lived outdoors, couldn't maintain the ritual purity required by the law, and were seen as religiously unclean and socially undesirable. Their jobs kept them from participating fully in religious life, and their testimony wasn't even accepted in court. They were the last people anyone would expect to receive the first revelation of the Messiah's birth, but God chose them on purpose. The manger represented total access. No gates, no guards, no protocols, no social requirements. It was a common object found in any peasant home, used daily to feed animals. Anyone, rich or poor, clean or unclean, respected or despised, could walk up to a manger without permission or ritual preparation. From his very first day, Jesus was literally within reach of everyone. This divine choice set the tone for Jesus' entire ministry. He would be accessible to tax collectors, prostitutes, lepers, Samaritans, and all the marginalized people rejected by the official religion. The manger was the first declaration that God's kingdom wouldn't be exclusive to a religious elite, but open to anyone hungry for spiritual truth and humble enough to come close. The bread of life was placed in the simplest, most accessible spot possible. But how did such a special family end up living in extreme poverty? 40 days after Jesus' birth, Joseph and Mary went up to Jerusalem to fulfill the purification law and present their firstborn at the temple. Luke 2:24 records a detail many readers overlook, but it reveals the family's true financial situation. They offered a pair of doves or 2 pigeons instead of a lamb. That wasn't a personal preference. It was a public acknowledgement that they were too poor to afford the standard sacrifice. Leviticus 12:8 clearly states that the bird offering was allowed only if she cannot afford a lamb. Joseph, even as a skilled tekton, didn't have enough money to buy a lamb that cost several weeks' wages. That means they lived literally paycheck to paycheck with no savings or financial cushion. Every missed day of work meant a day without food on the table. The poverty of the Holy Family wasn't romantic or symbolic, it was raw and demanding. Mary likely mended the same clothes over and over. Joseph worked under sun and rain, chasing construction jobs. And Jesus grew up watching his parents count every coin before buying basic food. They knew the anxiety of not knowing if there'd be work next week, the embarrassment of not being able to offer the best sacrifice at the temple, and the reality of depending on God's mercy for daily needs. This poverty wasn't accidental. It was part of God's plan for Jesus to fully understand the human condition. He didn't grow up shielded from financial worry in a royal palace. He personally experienced the anxiety of a working family struggling to survive. When Jesus later taught about not worrying about food or clothing, Matthew 6:25-26, he spoke as someone who had lived it, not as a philosopher who never knew need. But how did this poor family survive when they had to flee to Egypt? The wise men from the east weren't just curious visitors bringing symbolic gifts. They were instruments of divine providence who saved the Holy Family's lives. The gold, frankincense, and myrrh they offered, Matthew 2:11, weren't just prophetic tributes to Jesus as king, priest, and sacrifice. They were practical financial resources that allowed the family to survive as refugees in Egypt. God used pagan astrologers to fund the escape of his own son. Picture Joseph waking up in panic after the angel's warning dream, telling him to flee immediately because Herod was coming to kill the child. Matthew 2:13. They had only a few hours before soldiers reached Bethlehem for the massacre of the innocents. How could a poor family afford a journey of hundreds of miles, settle in a foreign country, and survive for years with no guaranteed work? The answer was in the gifts of the Magi, which became their survival fund. The gold paid for the journey, the initial lodging, and the first months in Egypt. The frankincense and myrrh were valuable commodities they could sell little by little to support themselves while Joseph looked for work. These gifts weren't luxuries. They were vital necessities that allowed Jesus, Mary, and Joseph to live as refugees in a completely different culture, speaking a foreign language, far from any family support. Jesus spent his early childhood as a refugee, experiencing uprooting, insecurity, and dependence on the kindness of strangers. He knew firsthand the vulnerability of someone without a homeland, the anxiety of living in foreign territory, and the humiliation of relying on others' generosity. When Jesus later said, "I was a stranger and you welcomed me," Matthew 25:35, he spoke as someone who had literally been a stranger in need of welcome. God chose for his son to experience even the condition of a refugee, to fully understand human suffering. But where did Jesus actually grow up, and how did that shape his worldview? Nazareth wasn't the quiet, isolated little village many people imagine. Just about 4 miles away was Sepphoris, one of the biggest cities in Galilee, which Herod Antipas was rebuilding as his regional capital. It was a cosmopolitan city with a Greek theater, Roman bathhouses, international markets, and a population of around 30,000. Joseph and Jesus, as skilled builders, most likely worked on Sepphoris's construction projects for years. Picture teenage Jesus walking with Joseph each day through the busy streets of Sepphoris, watching merchants negotiate in different languages, seeing the flashy wealth of the elites contrasted with the poverty of laborers, witnessing the social injustices of a system built to benefit a few at the expense of many. That daily exposure to urban complexity shaped his understanding of human nature and the social dynamics he would later address in his ministry. Jesus' parables reveal an intimate knowledge of the urban world, something that could only come from personal experience. He talked about builders who estimate costs before starting a tower, Luke 14:28-30. Kings who go to war and negotiate peace treaties, Luke 14:31-32. Bankers who lend money with interest, Matthew 25:27. And employers who hire workers at different wages, Matthew 21:16. This understanding didn't come from books or theories, but from years of observing these realities in Sepphoris. Jesus grew up at the intersection of two worlds, the rural simplicity of Nazareth and the urban sophistication of Sepphoris. This bicultural experience prepared him to minister to Galilean farmers and Jerusalem scholars alike, to humble fishermen and educated Pharisees. He could speak the language of the countryside, seeds, vineyards, shepherds, and also the language of the city, construction, finance, politics. God prepared his son through a practical education that embraced the full diversity of human experience. But why did Jesus use a specific theater term to criticize religious leaders? In Sepphoris, where Jesus probably worked for years, there was a massive Greek theater seating about 4,500 people. It was one of the biggest theaters in the region, where professional actors performed classic tragedies and comedies for a sophisticated audience. The Greek word for actor was hypocrites, literally one who answers from beneath, referring to actors who wore masks and pretended to be someone other than who they really were. When Jesus called the Pharisees hypocrites, Matthew 23:13-15, he wasn't using an abstract metaphor, but a specific cultural reference his audience knew well. He was saying the religious leaders were like stage actors, wearing masks of piety to hide their true motives, playing holy characters while their hearts were corrupt, performing for applause instead of living authentically before God. That choice of words shows how Jesus' urban experience in Sepphoris influenced his vocabulary and social critiques. He had seen actors shift personalities with different masks, watched how performances could fool crowds, and understood how outward appearance could contradict inner reality. That theatrical insight became a powerful tool for exposing religious fraud. Jesus' criticism of hypocrites was devastating because it used an image everyone recognized, performers pretending to be something they weren't just to win applause. When he accused the Pharisees of being whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the outside but full of dead bones and impurity on the inside, Matthew 23:27, he was using the same theatrical logic, an impressive exterior hiding inner decay. Jesus turned his urban experience into a prophetic critique that still resonates today. But what happened to Joseph during Jesus' silent years? Joseph completely disappears from the gospel accounts after the visit to the temple when Jesus was 12. He's not mentioned during Jesus' public ministry, not present at the wedding in Cana, and not at the crucifixion where Jesus entrusts Mary to John's care. That conspicuous absence suggests Joseph died during Jesus' hidden years, likely when Jesus was in his 20s, leaving him as the oldest man responsible for supporting a large family. As the firstborn, Jesus automatically became the head of the household after Joseph's death. Mark 6:3 indicates Jesus had at least 4 brothers, James, Joses, Judas, and Simon, and several sisters, a big family that depended on the work of the eldest son. Jesus spent roughly a decade working as a tekton to support his widowed mother and younger siblings, delaying his public ministry to fulfill his family responsibilities. Picture Jesus waking before sunrise, grabbing his construction tools and heading out to work under the blazing Galilean sun, knowing Mary and his younger siblings depended on every coin he earned. He knew the pressure of being the sole provider, the anxiety of not being able to get sick because that meant no food on the table, and the weight of making tough decisions about expenses and priorities. Jesus personally experienced the responsibility of caring for people he loved. That early experience of grief and responsibility deeply shaped Jesus' humanity and prepared him to understand human suffering up close. When he comforted the widow of Nain, Luke 7:11-15, or wept at Lazarus' death, John 11:35, it wasn't theoretical compassion, but empathy born from personal experience. Jesus knew what it meant to lose someone you love, to carry the burden of supporting a family, to sacrifice your own dreams for the needs of others. He lived all this before beginning his public ministry. But what's the deepest lesson we can draw from those hidden years? Of the 33 years Jesus lived on earth, only 3 were spent in the public ministry that changed history. The other 30 were lived in complete anonymity, working as a builder, supporting his family, paying taxes, dealing with difficult neighbors, facing the same pressures and challenges as anyone else. That ratio wasn't accidental. It was God's declaration that he deeply values ordinary life and finds glory in the simplest, most mundane activities. Jesus sanctified manual labor by dedicating most of his earthly life to construction work. Every stone set, every beam cut, every wall raised became an act of worship. The same hands that would one day heal lepers and raise the dead were the hands that carried heavy stones and worked rough tools for decades. He dignified manual work by choosing it as his main occupation for most of his life. Family life was also sanctified through Jesus' experience. He knew the tension of living with siblings who didn't understand his identity, John 7:5, the challenge of balancing family responsibilities with divine calling, and the pain of being misunderstood by those closest to him. Jesus experienced the joys and frustrations of domestic life, proving that God cares just as much about our private life as our public ministry. God's choice for Jesus to live 30 years in obscurity teaches that we don't need public platforms or positions of influence to please him. Every father working to support his family, every mother caring lovingly for her children, every worker doing their job with integrity is following Jesus' example. Holiness isn't reserved for pastors and missionaries. It's available to anyone choosing to live with divine purpose, even in the most ordinary circumstances. The real story of Joseph and Mary wasn't a fairy tale, but a journey of extraordinary courage in ordinary circumstances. They faced social scandal, threat of death, extreme poverty, forced exile, and all the pressures any working family faces. Yet they chose to trust God above their own security, obey His voice even when it cost them everything, and persevere in faith even without fully understanding the eternal plan they were fulfilling. Their story isn't just a historical account. It's a call for you to trust God with courage in the hardest moments of your own life. Jesus lived 30 years in obscurity to teach us that God values every moment of our existence, not just the public highlights. He sanctified manual labor, dignified family life, and transformed ordinary human experience into sacred ground where the divine meets the human. If this story moved your heart and challenged your view of faith and courage, hit the like button so more people can discover the true journey of Joseph and Mary. Comment, "Living a life that pleases God," if you also want the courage to trust the divine plan, even when circumstances seem impossible. Your comment helps build a community of faith where we can encourage each other to live with eternal purpose. And don't forget to subscribe to Biblical Memories and hit the bell icon to receive all the revelations that will transform your understanding of Scripture. But the story doesn't end here. There are many more hidden truths waiting to be uncovered. If you are impacted by these insights about Joseph and Mary, you need to watch our next video, The Hidden History of Christmas, Biblical Origins and Pagan Traditions Most Christians Don't Know, linked in the description and popping up on screen now. Get ready to discover how traditions we think are Christian actually have surprising origins that will change your understanding of Christmas forever. Click now and continue this journey of discovery that will strengthen your faith and expand your biblical knowledge for good.